Is it better to buy a new NAS or buy a used second-hand NAS? Welcome to the Raid Room. Me and Ed just finished a video prior to this recording where we were talking about how long a NAS should actually last. It was one of the longer Raid Room videos, and towards the end of it, I realised that there was another big question. A lot of users are going to be wondering when it comes to how long a NAS should last, is it worth just buying second-hand rather than buying new? Because if you've seen how much these things cost and when they get refreshed, how old the previous series goes. So before we go any further, Eddie, I'm cutting you completely on the bounce. We've not prepped for this. Should someone buy a brand new NAS or should they buy second-hand?
I would always go for the brand new because simply you don't get the warranty. You don't know what has happened to the NAS, how hard has been pushed for and for how long. And the second thing is that the price, the discount regarding the NAS market and storage market, you do not get much of a discount. If you look up on eBay, like 2 years old model, it's not going to be that big of a discount. So I would go for a new model with a warranty for sure.
I mean, again, I've already sort of 3 reasons I'm going to argue with you because I'm great to be around. But I would argue, before I even get to that point, you're right. If I look at this, the DS925 Plus from the previous video, and I look at the DS923 or the DS920, which is a slight exception, which because of its multimedia capabilities, the difference is because these devices aren't exactly hugely expensive in the first place, the margins are actually pretty small. So a box, this might be 550. You can pick up a 923 for about $450. I mean, Synology shot themselves in the foot with that hard drive stuff, and it actually made the old stuff sell quite expensively. But that's a story for another day. However, I think your point is less palatable the minute we talk about servers in the larger scale rack mounts. I think a lot of people that are going the DIY route will look at eBay and look at X server, X data center stuff, and some of that is absolutely banging value in terms of what you're getting there. Now, it's not a perfect world, let's face it. Some of that stuff is really inefficient for the home, really inefficient for home lab. I know you're going to say that, so I'm going to stop you saying it before you can interrupt me and tell me I'm wrong, which is something I do all the time. But the thing, one point you didn't touch on there when you mentioned warranty is service software support. Because the old solutions, you might get a device from, say, 2020 and save yourself a couple of £100. But that device, again, this extends to all the NAS brands, you might be missing out on years of security updates, years of software and service support and feature updates and more. And that's one of those areas that I do think you're right. Buying new, you're paying that extra for that long-term life. Less so the hardware warranty, because these devices are generally pretty good for their warranty periods. They're not like a lot of electronics that you can buy these days. Like the fact iPhones have, what, a 1-year warranty? Is it 1 year? Is it 2 years now? Oh, fantastic.
Maybe 1 year.
It depends if it's Europe. I think it like the EU and Europe, I think there is rulings on that. But there's so many top tier expensive hardware that you can buy that only has 1 year. Same goes for white goods as well. I was banging on about boilers in the previous video. Like, there's some kind of weird thing about hardware warranties, how long brands are prepared to commit. And most of these NAS brands have 2 to 3 year warranties as standard. Some of the enterprise stuff at 5 years. And I think most of these products will easily outlive that period. But it's the software and support. And buying some of the older series devices, when you're relying on their software, then obviously service and software support becomes less, useful and more, the value point falls out of its arse. But when it comes to non-turnkey, so going TrueNAS, Unraid, these have got effective lifetime support. So if you go, for example, for an old QNAP like this, you might be right in terms of you've lost the hardware warranty for a period. You've kind of lost a good period and chunk of time of their software support. You can stick TrueNAS on it, and you've got TrueNAS support forever.
If you pay for it.
No, only if you want industrial support. If you buy it and you use TrueNAS as is right now, you're fine. Yeah. You can scale it up, you can keep using it. You've got the community support, which is free, I guess, to everyone and the person given the support. Yeah, but I think that's an argument where buying second-hand and buying used can actually be pretty good.
Yeah.
And I think, I'm finishing my point. With a lot of the turnkey NAS solution brands, I think some of them are becoming quite savvy to it. Acer Store is a great example. Acer Store is one of the loudest and proudest about, user management, user do what you want. And they're quite open. They were one of the loudest about installing third-party software, but also tinkering. They've got one of the more open warranty support where you can really F around quite a lot. Anyway, you were saying.
No, that's very true. You already answered all your questions. That's completely true. Of course, if you buy a ready-built NAS like Synology or QNAP, obviously they're having their own OS on it, and they made these products, as we mentioned earlier, to be used for 5 to 10 years, and that's it. That's how they keep themselves alive in the market. But you're completely right. If you buy something like Dell or some old servers from existing businesses, you just stick open source OS on it, and that's it, or TrueNAS, and you can use it as you wish. It's not the most power efficient NAS. It's going to consume so much electricity, and it is old, but for certain things like multimedia, file storage, and simple things like this, you can use it.
Virtualization as well.
Yeah, it's maybe some of it, but it's not the latest hardware there. But there are things you can do with it. Probably it's better to still build your own thing rather than get a second-hand thing, because again, back to warranty thing. But it's a good point. Yeah, you can have lifetime software updates, because Synology is not going to give you lifetime DSM updates. But this is a good way to do it, yeah, and reduce your costs.
I say, and another point, and I think this is becoming truer year on year. I remember some of the comments and videos from way back during the pandemic when people were sort of working from home and they were trying to debate between building their own, buying second-hand, or buying new off the shelf. I think it was a very good year for server solutions 2020 for all the brands, because people suddenly realised, they needed data under a bare metal server they could access without just relying on Google and being throttled in performance. But one of the things that's significantly changed, be it because of the cost of goods, be it because of AI, we'll get onto that in a sec, and because of just general trends in storage, a lot of the time when you buy a NAS solution, the biggest spend isn't the NAS. The NAS is making up a smaller and smaller and smaller percentage of the TCO, of the total cost of ownership, the whole NAS solution overall. And a lot of the time, the margins of saving between a new NAS and an old NAS pales in comparison to when you buy a device like this 8-bay with data getting bigger and how much storage we need. If you put 10 TB drives inside this, I think this NAS box is about 1,500. I know it's the old generation, and you can buy it second-hand now for about 700 or 800 nickel. It's actually gone down in value quite substantially in that period. But drives haven't. If anything, they've only got more expensive. And buying second-hand drives, I would argue that buying second-hand drives, I would never recommend. That's one of those things. I'm open to debate in buying second-hand NAS solutions in terms of hardware and the components, but would you recommend buying used drives, hard drives or SSD?
I would not recommend anyone to sell their drives, simply because of data security as well, because you can never erase things from your hard drives, even if you try to. And you don't know what's been happening to those drives, how they were been treated. You don't know anything about them.
But that's what the point I'm making is, people that are looking at buying used NAS devices, and again, I do personally. If you put like a gun to my head, which would be weird, but if you put a gun to my head and ask me, what would you recommend, buying new or used? If you're on a tight budget, definitely buying used or building your own, 100%. But the savings that can be made there, once you're looking at populating these devices with M.2 SSDs, populating it with RAM, populating it with the hard drives, you suddenly realise that you are about to spend a lot of money anyway. And if you have to buy a bunch of new hard drives, you have to buy a bunch of new M.2 NVMEs, and you've got to buy a bunch of RAM for this system anyway, the saving that you were making of quite literally hundreds of pounds when you're already laying out thousands, if not tens in some cases, it becomes so small that the compromise that you are potentially making in software service support and the compromise you might be making in hardware warranty becomes almost flippant. Again, I do still champion that. I do think overall, on a budget, buying used and DIY is still the better option. But in the broader scope of things in 2026 moving forward.
In 2026, with this AI boom and that everything's becoming unreasonably expensive, the hidden avenue is actually buying these old servers, because if you buy these components individually, you're going to probably spend 3 times, if not 5 times more than if you buy some old server, because nobody is thinking and realizing that the RAM inside the server is probably more expensive than the server itself, what is listed on the eBay. So yes, this is something that people don't know yet. So those that know, they buy these older NASes and they save substantially on the components.
But earlier on, you were telling me about RAM adapters. Like, Tell me, talk about those a little bit. That's an example of people buying used in a really odd way that people are being forced to do. So what's the adapters thing about?
The adapter is just ridiculous how everything has become so expensive, and not just only hard drives and SSDs, but particularly RAM, because obviously AI needs that component so much, and all these RAM companies, they stopped the production lines for consumer market. They just shut it down. They say, no, we're just going to make components only for data centers. So there's shortages and the price is so high. People start thinking about using DDR4 and DDR3 memories in their solutions. So there are some companies obviously always trying to figure out how to fix the problem in the market, what's the demand, and I think it was Asus that came up with adapter. I don't know if it's going to be actually affordable solution at the end to produce something like that. You can convert from DDR5 to DDR4, which is ridiculous that people are actually considering to downgrade their system.
As well as UDIM into SODIM and vice versa.
Yes, also
well.
from this, exactly.
I mean, AliExpress, if AliExpress isn't already flooded by these things, and we'll look on, if there is any, we'll link to them below, and we'll definitely get some for the channel and test them out. But I think ultimately, we're circling here into the same point, which is, if you can find an affordable option, great, but realistically, affordable options are getting thinner and thinner. The overall spend that you're going to be making could result in that the one part that you are buying secondhand and everything else new might compromise the whole build as a whole. And ultimately, the things that you miss out on by going secondhand, depending on your level as a user, particularly businesses, of course, but even home users, software updates, firmware updates, in the case of Turnkey, is often what makes up most of your paying for peace of mind of set up and forget. And that is something that you maybe don't consider in the same way with a DIY solution. But what do you guys think? Personally, when it comes to buying a NAS new or buying a NAS secondhand, again, if you're on a budget, I'd recommend it, but nothing more than a 4-bay. Nothing more than a 4-bay, because if you are fully populating or you're thinking scale out the savings you are making is debatable. But again, that isn't a hard and fast rule.
Yeah, for me, I would just say, like, be very honest with yourself and just write it down what you're going to use this NAS for exactly. Is it going to be only 4K 1080p, and just buy that thing that does the job? Because in the past, we would just buy something for the future. Think, maybe in the future we're going to have 4K, so I'm going to buy something more expensive. I think this is in these times when everything is so expensive, you need to buy a thing that is for that purpose right now.
And I think if you are going to go DIY, a lot of the time, when people say, oh, I'm saving money going DIY, they're still mostly buying new components anyway, so it still counts as buying new. Ed Rawlins over Space Invader 1, we should get him back on the channel, because I know he's got definitely different views to this with regards to like a lot of the rack service we see on eBay, and we did some comparisons of pricing. We did a video a couple of years ago about that, but I'll link to that in the description. Anyway, thanks for joining us in the raid room today. Thanks for jumping on as ever, Eddie. I will see you next time.